This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. It's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And today we have a very important show. All of our shows are important, and we always talk about the good news and bad news about money. But today we're talking about a very important subject. It's about the theft of something that's very, very important to you. You see, what's kind of unique today is you don't have to be rich to be a target for thieves. You know, when I was a kid growing up in the little town of Hilo, Hawaii, we never locked our doors. You know, there was no problem. But by the 70s, you had to lock your door. Then after you locked your door, you had to put on, you know, some kind of invasion protection. So if when it came through the window, it was set off. And so, you know, it just gets progressively worse. You know, you have to protect your valuables, and those ADT and all those other guys, Brinks. But today, even if you lock your door, they're going to come and get you. And today, they're not really after your money. They're after something far more important. So you could have nothing, and still they want to steal it from you. And it's a thing called your identity. So today we have my sweetheart Kim, and we're kind of worried about it because we have, you know, we've had a home invasion twice now. We live in a very secure neighborhood. We have our own police force, and we have real police force simply because this is the world we live in. But as you know, they don't really even have to come in through the door. They just come in, you know, through cyberspace today. So stealing your identity we're going to find out today why you should protect your identity, whether you're rich or not. Because your identity, stuff like your social security number and all that, your bank accounts, your tax returns, are extremely valuable. I mean, you could be flat broke and still be valuable to an identity thief. So joining me today is Ken McElroy. He's Rich Dad Advisor. He's our partner in so many real estate deals. And just recently, Ken had the experience of having his identity stolen. And also Robert Siciliano. He is a personal security and ID theft expert, and he is the CEO of ID Theft Security. Just recently, the head of the CIA got hacked by a high school kid, and the head of Homeland Security got hacked by a high school kid. Man, if you can't protect yourself from a high school kid, and these guys are the most powerful guys around, and they still get hacked.
Well, you know, too, that if you walk into your house and your house has been burglarized, you know it immediately. You walk in, you go, where's my TV? Where's my computer? But when you get your identity stolen, number one, you don't know who did it, but you don't always know when they did it. So sometimes, you know, you're talking about kids. These kids may have gotten their identities hacked, and they don't know it until years later when they go to, you know, buy a car or buy a house. So what I love about this show is, you know, the Rich Dad Radio Show, we're all about talking about how you build your wealth. And today is about how you protect your wealth and, more importantly, how you protect you.
So welcome to the program, Robert and Kenny.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. You know, this is a problem that is affecting, some studies show, as many as 10 to 12 million people every year in the U.S. alone. There have been billions of personal identifying records compromised in the past decade, and it unfortunately is getting worse and not getting any better. Right. Consumers are at a serious disadvantage in many ways. The system that we function under, the way in which we're identified, is based on paper documents such as birth certificates and driver's license, which is they're plastic, but they're, easily repeatable, meaning they can easily be counterfeited. Passports also can be easily counterfeited. Social security cards, they are easily counterfeited. So all these documents that we're stuck with, that we're identified with, all can be bought and sold, all can be, copied and scanned and recreated, and they don't really effectively identify you or I. And then there's the social security number. So on top of it all, we're using 9 digits to identify who we are. 9 digits that are in databases and filing cabinets all over the place.
So what you're saying, there's so many ways that somebody can access and steal from you today.
In so many ways that they can become you based on such a simple form of identification, verification, and authentication that really that has not properly proofed or proved who we actually are.
So
The reality is dogs and cattle have been identified more effectively than humans.
So Kenny, you recently got your identity stolen. Do you know how that happened?
This is a very funny story because Kenny's a funny guy. Well, one of his best friends owns a company called LifeLock. He gets free LifeLock but doesn't use it. I mean, God, is anything more stupid than that? Kenny, come on. What happened? What happened to you?
Well, I called Todd.
Todd, who was this?
Todd Davis from LifeLock, right? And I was like,
he's the founder of LifeLock.
I said, let's go have breakfast. I sat down with him. I told him, and he just dropped his head, shaked his head, and then berated me for about 30 minutes.
Because he gave you several free services, right?
Yeah. I just never did it.
So do you know how they hacked you? Do you know what happened?
Not exactly. Here's actually what happened was, we were getting our taxes ready to go for this year, and
this is your partner too, right?
Yeah, my partner, my wife, and his wife. So 4 of us, all were getting ready to file our taxes, and the tax company that we use, they said we have good news, we have bad news. The bad news is that somebody's already e-filed for your taxes. And the only way for them to know that is that they have your Social Security numbers. So,
and why would they file for your taxes? What does that do?
In the case there were refunds.
In case there were refunds there.
Yes.
So they're going after the refunds.
Yes.
So, Robert, what do you think of that?
So tax identity theft is a huge problem. It's one that, unfortunately, has gotten a lot worse over the past 4 or 5 years. When you think about the IRS and how they function and, their methodology, to a certain degree, the whole system is based on the honor system.
The government has an honor system.
Honor system?
That's pretty funny.
Well, think about it for a second. What you file, what you claim, to a certain degree, is based on you being honest. And the only checks and balances on that system is getting audited, right? So that in and of itself tells us that the IRS isn't all that secure, and then it's even who files their taxes and posing as whoever is based on the honor system. Like, there's no way to identify and authenticate that the return that they have is in fact from you.
So let me ask you this: what did the guy have to do to become Ken McElroy, or woman?
You mean to become a victim?
No. How did they even access Ken McElroy?
What do they need to file for his tax refund? What would they need to have?
They might need an employee identification number or simply a Social Security number. They might want to know a little bit about him. They can simply break into his mailbox and get some of his mail. And
the physical mailbox or the web mailbox?
They can, generally your post office box, right? Your physical address, the mailbox in the front of your home.
So let me ask you this. I was just at the doctor's office and they want my Social Security number. Is that going to pick it up there too?
They could get it from there as well. But, in certain situations, you're going to have to give up your social. And I actually have no problem with that. Like, give up your social when they need it in order for you to get services. But there are things that you can and should do ahead of time proactively to reduce a certain amount of risk.
Okay. Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news of getting your identity stolen. And today we're talking to Robert Siciliano, personal security and ID theft expert. And we have Ken McElroy, who's very good friends with the founder of LifeLock. Todd gave Kenny free LifeLock. I mean, even Kim and I have LifeLock. But you didn't do it. But they got you. Huh? They came in and they got you. How'd they get you?
Again, I'm not quite sure. We, as Robert pointed out, we have our Social Security numbers on a number of things as we go get loans, real estate loans, both commercially and personally. So it's hard to know exactly how they got, because they got Laura, my wife, myself, Ross, and his wife.
So once you found out, I mean, I know you called Todd of LifeLock, and
had lunch with him.
But then what do you do?
Did he call you an idiot?
I think so. Actually, I think it was a little harsher than that. But we went down to LifeLock and we ended up. He has a whole team of folks, and Robert probably knows this. As he pointed out, it's a huge. Now that when IRS started to do e-filing, it's my understanding that this is a lot more prevalent. Yeah, it opened it up.
So what's prescriptive? What do you have to do now?
Well, from what I remember, there's 3 divisions in the IRS. The one's called the Taxpayer Protection Department, and there's an ID theft department, and then there's another department. We have to navigate through all 3 of those in order to get reinstated.
What do you mean by reinstated?
Well, because we have a fraud alert now on our Social Security number, it's going to be a lot more difficult for all kinds of things. Anything that I apply for now.
So you do a lot of loans and all that. Is that going to affect your loans?
It could. We haven't had to do that yet, but it very well could.
So, Robert, do you have any advice for Kenny?
So he certainly sounds like he's unfortunately had to go through this process, and he's doing all the right things. My guess is the IRS provided you with documentation to fill out now, so in the future they scrutinize not necessarily your tax return, but where it's coming from, and there's more data that they look at to make sure that it's actually coming from you opposed to somebody else. So that, again, the IRS has a few documents they put you on a list so they know that you've been a victim of this in the past, and they pay closer attention to who you are specifically, so they're not giving you a refund to a criminal. Along with investing in identity theft protection, I've actually been to Tempe, to LifeLock, their headquarters, and they know what they're talking about.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking a very important subject here, identity theft, and your identity is probably more valuable than anything you have. So you don't even need money to be valuable today. They can just steal your identity. As I said, when I was a kid, we left our doors open. Then it progressed to locking our doors. Then we had to put home burglar systems in. And today, Kim and I live in a neighborhood. We have our own 2 police forces to back up our neighborhood. So when we come back, we're going to find out from Robert Siciliano and Ken McElroy, or from Robert, what could have Ken done and what can you do to not be a victim like my buddy Ken, who is a friend of the founder of LifeLock. I mean, talk about stupid. We'll be right back.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. You're listening to The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to this program on your time and your schedule with the Rich Dad Radio app, available at the App Store. And also, we archive all of our programs. So if you want to listen to this program again, it's a very important program to listen to again, because when you listen to it again, you learn something more. Also, you can get together with your friends and family, especially like Kenny had his wife's identity stolen. So you want to get together with your wife or husband or kids and understand more about why they want your identity stolen. So they can go to Rich Dad Radio and re-listen to this broadcast. So our special guest today is Ken McElroy. For Kim and I, he is our real estate partner, and we have millions of dollars invested with him. Now, I don't trust him because... And Kenny is the author of the ABCs of Real Estate Investing. It's a Rich Dad Advisor book. Please get that book, but get Robert's book on how not to get stolen. And the Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing. And Kenny's website is mccompanies.com. And Robert Siciliano, he's a personal security and ID theft expert. He's the CEO of IDTheftSecurity.com. And we're talking today about, when the head of the CIA and the head of Homeland Security gets hacked and get their identity stolen by a high school kid. That's what they claim it was. That's pretty bad. So we're going to find out that it really is not about money. It's how valuable is your identity. So today they want to hack, they want to get the identity of kids who have nothing. And also they probably want Donald Trump's identity. And we fit in somewhere in between the two. Robert, let me ask you this question. Why would they want a kid's identity?
That's a issue due to the fact that a child's Social Security number is as valuable as an adult's Social Security number. You wouldn't think that a baby could get a credit card, but the reality of it is that a adult can get the kid's social, apply for a line of credit under the kid's name, and simply falsify the age and the address in which the credit card might go to. And once a credit report is established using that basic information, then the criminal can go ahead and open up a number of other lines of credit and can function as that child that's on paper an adult now.
Could they do that to a dead
Yeah.
person? Could they do it to a dead person also?
It can and has been done with the deceased quite a bit. Now, there was a time when the Death Master Index would take quite a while to update, and it would allow the criminal to function as that deceased for quite a bit longer.
The what index?
Death Master Index.
Is that one you're on,
The
Kenny?
Social Security Administration requires that people whose family members are deceased, they submit the information to them. Often it's funeral directors that are doing that in behalf of the family.
So when you're talking about kids, you're talking about they're actually creating a person.
Well, they're not entirely a fictitious person. You know, they're falsifying the age of the existing person, and they might alter the person's name a little bit, but they're definitely altering the address if it's not a parent that's actually stealing the child's identity, which happens quite a bit too.
The parents will steal the identity?
All the time.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Really?
my God.
Because
It might be-
their finances are so screwed up that they take their kid's identity?
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Wow, that's pretty desperate.
And Kenny, you talked about is that when you were at LifeLock and, asking for absolution from your sins, they told you that they actually can build an identity or something?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what Robert just said. And what happens is, kids don't really need their Social Security number for a long time.
Yeah.
And so, if they're going after these young Social Security numbers, and then they're building an identity around that, and they're building credit, and and then they use them later.
So Robert, so we're talking about the kids. What is of real value to these hackers? What are they going after?
Well, there's two fundamental types of identity theft. There is new account fraud and account takeover. New account fraud is when they get your social, and they open up new lines of credit, new accounts under your name, and you don't know about this until you're either denied credit, because the bad guys generally, when they open up a new line of credit, they don't pay the bill. Or
I can do that myself. They don't need to. Go ahead.
Or they, or when the victim goes to check their credit, to see, what lines of credit are open and what their credit scores are, they see all these revolving lines of credit that generally are defaulted on. That's when they find out about it. And that is the most damaging in regards to your credit standing and your ability to get credit. Obviously, new account fraud can significantly affect the quality of a person's life going forward, because in a credit-driven society, we're judged quality of character based on our credit.
So, Kenny, they told you it's about a 9-year process or something to clear something?
Yeah, and they basically, there's a fraud alert, I guess, and maybe it's 7 years or 9 years, maybe, Robert, but yeah, there's a time frame where, they're looking for,
So when you apply for something now on your identity, your Social Security, they have a fraud alert thing on it?
Yeah, there's fraud alerts on everything, and so we had to go go into all our bank accounts, and anything that has, as Robert said, anything that has a Social Security number, because you can open a bank account with a Social Security number.
Right.
All those things we had to put fraud alerts on.
So what does that do for him, Robert, when he has fraud alert and the bank sees it? What does a bank do? What goes through the banker's mind?
And how will this affect Kenny's business? I mean, there's personal identity, then there's the business.
Right. So there's a lot going on here, and Kenny said a lot of things that, unfortunately, factually are incorrect. And what that means is that, first of all, fraud alert lasts for 90 days, and then it expires, and it's gone, and it's only 3 months. And you file that through the 3 major credit bureaus. And what that does is it is an alert to the creditors, to lenders that are checking your credit to issue you credit, that this person may be a victim of identity theft. And it prompts them, does not require them, but it prompts them to further authenticate the application and to contact you directly to make sure that you, in fact, are in the process of trying to open up this new line of credit. So fraud alert in and of itself has some value for 90 days. It's an extra layer of authentication. And you only do it at the credit bureaus, and then it goes away. It is probably the least effective form of identity theft protection there is out there today.
Once again, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking to Robert Siciliano. He's a personal security ID theft expert, CEO of IDTheftSecurity.com. And Ken McElroy is a Rich Dad advisor, he's a partner on millions of dollars of real estate investing. And Kenny, and his website is mccompanies.com, author of ABCs of Real Estate Investing, which just lost your credibility on that book. But the advanced guide to real estate investing, you put how to protect your... But anyway,
so
the question we want to get into here is how do we prevent it? What are they coming? How many different ways are they going to come get us? Right?
Yeah, because if the 90-day is not effective, what is effective?
So you mentioned your relationship with LifeLock. So what LifeLock does is they monitor your credit, they monitor your credit report, they look for new lines of credit being opened up under your name, which is a really good thing. Most identity theft protection services do that today. But what else that LifeLock does that most of the other services don't do is they monitor your social on applications for credit in real time. So for example, let's just say LifeLock has a relationship with American Express, and someone's trying to open up a line of credit under your name, and LifeLock's service might see that application for credit as it's being processed in real time. They do that through a company that they own. The company's called ID Analytics. ID Analytics is like under the umbrella of LifeLock. And so they see that application for credit as it's being processed, and they'll contact you if you're a LifeLock customer to make sure that you, in fact, are in the process of opening up a line of credit with American Express. That's a really good thing. And to see in real time that application being processed keeps you out of hot water. So most of the other services, they don't know about it until the line of credit's already been opened and maybe the damage has already been done. So that in of itself is a really great thing. The other thing that you can and should do is what's called a credit freeze. Okay, so sometimes interchangeably, consumers use the term credit freeze and fraud alert because they don't understand the difference. A credit freeze really is the best thing that you and anyone should do to protect your identity. Robert, Kim, everyone should have a credit freeze right now. And what this does is it locks down your social security number on your credit report. Basically, it locks down your credit report so that nobody, including you, can open up a new line of credit until you, in fact, thaw or unlock your credit report.
So how do you do that?
Yeah, who do you do this through?
How do you do that?
So it's relatively easy to do. So administratively, you keep good records. You get an Excel file. You plug in all the particulars into the Excel file. What you do is you go to each credit bureau, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, right? You just go right to their website. And
what was that again? What was that website?
The three major credit bureaus are Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax.
Okay.
All right? So that's the three major credit bureaus. And you go to their websites individually, and you search the term credit freeze on their website. And when you're on their website and you search the term credit freeze, you will find the page to freeze your credit. So basically, you're filling out some information. You fill out an affidavit, and you might plug in a credit card number. They're going to probably want your social security number. They may want you to sign additional information. But once you freeze your credit, they're going to provide you with a website to visit and a username and a password and or a code that you type in when you want to thaw your credit. Okay, so it might cost you $10 per credit bureau for life to freeze your credit, and it might cost you $5 to thaw your credit temporarily when you thaw your credit, which might be once a year or once every 10 years for that matter. If you're not dipping into your credit often, then it might be like, once a year, $5. It's no big deal. But as long as you have an Excel file with all the particulars, your name and your social and the different URLs to each of the credit bureaus to thaw your credit along with the username, password, and code, it's easy to do. It's no different than writing a status update in Facebook.
And can you do a credit freeze once your identity's been stolen?
You should freeze your credit now, proactively, before your identity is compromised. Right now. And that protects you from new account fraud. Everybody's credit should be frozen across the board right now. But credit bureaus, retailers, banks have all fought so that you can't have your credit frozen across the board.
Say that again. Say that again.
Retailers, bankers, and others have fought so you can't have your credit frozen across the board, meaning like everybody's credit, I think, should be frozen, but they don't want your credit to be frozen because they can't issue you credit instantly like at a Best Buy, for a $5,000 plasma TV. So, which means that all of your large financial decisions have to be well thought out, which is a good thing.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking to Robert Siciliano. Robert, your information is priceless. He's a personal security and ID theft expert. He's the CEO of IDTheftSecurity.com. And also Ken McElroy. He's our partner in millions of dollars of real estate. And he's a Rich Dad advisor and founder of MC Companies. His website is mccompanies.com. And Ken is the author of the ABCs of Real Estate Investing, which is the primer, and then the Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing, which is kind of a finance novel. But today we're talking about identity theft. And as the whole theme of the show was that, before you had to have money before somebody wanted to steal from you. Now you don't even need money. They want to steal from you. So when we come back, we'll be finding out more of how your identity can be stolen, but more importantly, what you can do about it. We'll be right back.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. The good news and bad news about money. This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. Good news and bad news about money. And then once again, you can listen to this program on your time and your schedule. The Rich Dad Radio app available at the App Store, and all of our programs are archived. Just go to richdadradio.com. And once again, the reason we archive this program is so you can listen to it again, because repetition is how we learn. But also, it's like when they got Kenny, they got Laura, your wife, also. So this would be a good program to listen to with the people you love, with people you do business with. So that's why all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. And today we're talking to Robert Siciliano. He's a personal security ID theft expert, CEO of IDTheftSecurity.com. And Ken McElroy, who had just recently had his identity stolen through the tax return. We all heard about Target. They got hacked. Blue Cross Blue Shield got hacked.
20 million people in the U.S. government,
got hacked.
Employees got hacked.
Which just shows us too many employees in the government. But other than that, how else can they get you, and what else can we do there, Robert?
The other type of identity theft being account takeover is generally when they get access to your existing accounts, like simply having a credit card number in their possession is a form of account takeover once they make unauthorized transactions. They get your bank account numbers, they can make unauthorized withdrawals, and so on. They get usernames and passwords. They can really manipulate everything in your life. If they get your email address and, along with your password, that can be problematic, because owning somebody's email, you own the person as far as if you're a hacker goes, because everything about you generally is in your email. So you want to make sure that you're obviously protecting your devices with updated antivirus, anti-spyware, anti-phishing, and a firewall. Make sure that all of your passwords are different across all of your accounts. You can't have the same password on 2 accounts. Trust me on that one. It's good to have a password manager. A password manager is something that allows you to have multiple different passwords and manage them effectively. It'll plug in your passwords for you, and it'll set you up with nice, strong passwords that you may not remember, but that's okay, because your password manager does. All right? And then make sure your device's operating system is properly updated, meaning like if you're in Microsoft or even Mac for that matter, you automatically update your operating system to the latest version, which means it's the most secure version. Keep your browser properly updated. That means that, your Internet Explorer or Chrome or Firefox is the latest version, because all of your software, it eventually has flaws of sorts that are found by either good guy hackers or bad guy hackers, and exploited ultimately by the bad guy hacker. So stay updated, keep strong password, use a password manager to protect yourself from account takeover. Now, as far as like your business partner being hacked and you being at risk, well, if he has data on his device and that data includes you, then yes, you are at risk. So you want to make sure that all of your accounts have different passwords, and you change your account's passwords if in any way, shape, or form your associates may have those passwords in any way.
When I go to a store and I want to apply for credit, it's called a credit app. Would you do that or not do that?
I generally do not apply for credit in a store ever. So my credit's frozen, right? And I have my Visa, I have my American Express, I have my MasterCard, and that's it. I don't have like 35 credit cards. That's just insane. And then I have the vehicle that I have. I own it actually, and so I'm not going to be getting credit for a vehicle. I'm in the house I'm going to be in for a while, so I'm not getting credit for a new loan anytime soon. So I'm not applying for lines of credit when I go to stores because A, my credit's frozen. B, I don't need store cards, you know. And most people shouldn't be doing that stuff anyways. As long as your credit's good, keep it that way. Freeze up your account, and there's no need to get 10% off at any store. Because now you're giving your identity to some, cashier for 10% off, and what's that going to get you?
And Robert, who are these bad guys? Who are they? Are they individuals? Are they organized crime? Are they government? Who's doing this?
Often it's those that have access to the data directly. So, for example, you call up your cable provider and they ask you for the last four of your social. That person very well could steal your identity. So utilities, government agency employees that have access to your data, your employer and fellow employees that have access to your data. Also, of course, criminal hackers that hack major retailers or other entities, insurance carriers that get access to your data, and they sell that data on the black market to other hackers.
So is there a whole market built around this? I mean, are there people trading and selling and buying people's identities?
100%, without a doubt. It models the information brokers' legitimate business practices. Criminals in the underground are selling our data on the web all day long. And I would say that with over 1 billion records being compromised in the past decade, and some say almost 2 billion records, depending on what you define as a personal identifying record, that chances are, more than likely, your information right now is in the hands of a criminal. Right now.
What happens
Scary.
if I'm social media and all that? Can they access either from Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff too?
So what they're seeing on social is they're seeing all of your information that might be used to crack a password reset. So if where you met your wife and where your honeymoon and your favorite food and all that stuff is part of your password reset, like those knowledge-based authentication questions, then they might crack those answers based on your information on the web and Wikipedia, on your social. And so you want to make sure that those knowledge-based authentication questions isn't information that can be readily found by Googling you. Sarah Palin's Yahoo account was hacked using that exact same process.
One of the things that I learned through this process was, because my kids are 14 and 17, yeah. And my 17-year-old, is starting to get a credit card, and of course he doesn't have any credits, so they go to us, and then also they just they need things, so they're online buying things using our credit cards, and you don't always know where they're going. You know what I mean? So they suggested doing these prepaid credit cards for even for our kids. Because there's no way for a kid to get credit without their parents co-signing, so that's another layer, of exposure for us.
So what would you say to parents, Robert? What would you say to parents in this situation?
Well, I think that all parents should invest in identity theft protection for themselves, and they should invest in the same for their kids. So 17 and under, you can't actually freeze their credit unless you're from one of the states that allows that. So whatever state that you live in, you should search the term credit freeze in the name of your state and children and determine if, in fact, your state provides you the option to freeze your kid's credit. I think maybe less than a third of all the states in the U.S. allow that, but you should freeze your kid's credit and or invest in identity theft protection to watch their social. As far as credit cards are concerned, frankly, and hear me out right now, do not worry about credit card fraud. Straight up, don't worry about it. If you spend 1 second of your life's energy thinking and worrying about credit card fraud, then you're misdirected. You should, in fact, pay attention to your credit card statements. You should do that. You should monitor your statements and make sure that all of the charges are authorized by you and or your kids. Yes, you should do that. But as far as credit card fraud goes, there's nothing you can do to prevent it, ever. So use your cards wherever, whenever, and don't worry about it. But you do need to pay attention to your statements. And the best and most efficient way to do that is to download your bank or credit card company's mobile application. Every time there's a charge made, you get a notification via the app, and or you can go to the bank or credit card company's website and sign up for alerts and notifications. So every time there's a charge made, you're alerted to the fact. So this way, when you do check your statements, either online or at the end of the month, you've already seen all the charges that occurred. You've already confirmed with your family members that they in fact did make that charge. Because, for example, I get a charge on my card for Sally Beauty for $199. I send a text to my wife saying, "Hey, did you make this charge?" She sends me a text back saying, "Are you stalking me again?"
I was wondering what kind of fight would happen between husband and wife in this situation.
I'd be sending a lot of texts, Robert. I don't know.
But it's good to know about the charges when they occur, because even when you get your statements every month, you don't know what half the charges are anyways, because they're not where you actually shop, because the merchant's name isn't the place you actually went to. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's all something different. So it's good to know in real time as these charges are occurring. And I spend, $10,000, $15,000 a month on credit card charges. I know every single charge as it happens, and I'm cool with it. And that way, I'm in tune with the activity on my cards. But don't worry about it, but do something about it.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're talking about identity theft. Our guest today, Ken McElroy, is our partner in real estate, and he just recently had his Social Security hacked through the IRS. And Robert Siciliano, he's a personal security and ID theft expert and CEO of IDsecurity.com. And he's incredible information. And that's why we recommend you listen to this program once or twice, and your wife and kids or husband should listen to it also, because this is a very valuable program. As I said,
information. There's a lot of information.
It's
in this.
overload, really, so you can take
really
notes when you listen to it again. But the whole thing here is that years ago you could lock your door. Now you can't. You don't even need to lock your door, because they're going to get you anyway, and they can steal something much more valuable than money or gold and silver, your identity. But Robert, let me ask you this question. What's the flaws? What is the weakness in LifeLock?
Identity theft protection products can't protect you from things like medical identity theft. They can't protect you from tax-related identity fraud. And in some cases, they can't protect you from new account fraud, and they definitely can't protect you from account takeover, right? But what they do effectively, generally, is protect you from new account fraud most of the time, depending on, the nature of their service. So in that respect, it's good. Primarily, the benefit of a good identity theft protection service is their restoration component. So if they have a really good restoration component, then often they will...
You mean restoring, so if somebody gets hacked, restoring their credit?
Restoring their credit, fixing medical identity theft, fixing tax-related identity theft, fixing account takeover. You have a human being on the other end of the line, a case manager that actually knows who to call and what to do and how to fix this thing to reset the clock and make you whole again. That's the benefit of identity theft protection, beyond, whatever new account fraud they can protect you from.
The cloud. Is the cloud any safer than all the other internet stuff?
It's a funny question that I get from a lot of people. And my answer to that is the cloud is a myth. The cloud is the internet. Like your bank and all of your data is in the cloud. But what's the cloud? The cloud is a climate-controlled building that your bank either owns or they rent, or it's Amazon or it's Google or it's EMC or any other company that stores our data in behalf of your bank or whoever. And so the cloud is just, the internet, and it's climate-controlled, secured buildings that we store information on. Now, I have a lot of information in Google. I have a lot of information in Carbonite, which is a backup service that's a client of mine that I use to back up my data. So in the end, the cloud is only as secure as the company in which you're doing business with. And generally, they have military-grade encryption. They have everything to lose and nothing to gain by not being protected. In addition to that, you and your device is where the path of least resistance is. For example, if all you use is a username and a password, and it's the same password you have for Facebook as you do for your bank, then you're vulnerable. Your cloud is vulnerable. Whereas if you have, say, two-factor authentication or two-step authentication, whereas every time you log in, you have a username, you have a password, and then you get a text message for a one-time password, that's a lot more secure. That cloud will be a lot more secure because you have this additional two-factor authentication.
Once again, it's Robert Kiyosaki. I want to thank you, Robert. We're running out of time here, but your information is incredible. What does IDTheftSecurity.com do? What services do you provide?
By trade, I am a professional speaker. I present in corporations and associations all over the world. And I've also written a bestseller book. It's the 99 Things You Wish You Knew Before Your Identity Was Stolen. It's available on Amazon.
Say that again.
And
What's the title again?
99 Things You Wish You Knew Before Your Identity Was Stolen. And I also
should have bought the book, Kenny.
I also work with security companies as a corporate spokesperson, alerting the public to their brand and how it can benefit them and make them that much more secure.
Well, I thank you for your invaluable and profound service you provide. I mean, I never knew 99% of what you said, so anyway, I appreciate it. And I want to thank you for being part of our program today.
And I'm a big fan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Fantastic.
So when we come back, we're becoming the most popular part of the Rich Dad Radio Show. It's Ask Robert. And when you come back, you'll be hearing some of your questions. And if you have any questions for Ask Robert in the future, go to AskRobert@RichDadRadio.com. We'll be right back.
The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. It's time to hear the good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Once again, you can listen to the Rich Dad Show at your time and your schedule with the Rich Dad Radio app, available from the App Store. So now we're going into Ask Robert. It's a very important part of our program. And you can submit your questions to AskRobert@RichDadRadio.com. And today, most of our questions are about the basics and fundamentals of real estate. And that's why we asked Kenny to stick around, because we're just going to stay basic here. You know, these are the fundamentals about real estate. It's nothing to do with real estate. It's what you know about real estate that's most important. So anyway, Melissa, let's get to Ask Robert. And I'm glad Kenny is sticking around. Thanks for the time. And we're going to answer some very fundamental real estate questions. We answer these questions over and over again. I get sick and tired of answering because the answer is always the same. But nonetheless, for those of you who are going to ask these questions, they're important to you. So, Melissa, what's the first question about real estate?
Our first question today comes from John in Tucson, Arizona. Favorite book, Unfair Advantage. He says, let's assume with a crash that unemployment skyrockets. How do we protect our real estate assets when the jobs are no longer there for the renters?
That's a very important question, because real estate's only as good as jobs. If you have no jobs, your real estate's worthless. It's toast. Right, Kenny?
Well, it's happened. You know, you can look at countries, you can look at cities.
Detroit.
Yeah, it's definitely happened. So when there are no jobs, real estate values go down.
Yeah, and I was just in Detroit, and they say, it's coming back, but yeah. I think they've just bulldozed down. You know, people say my house is an asset. Well, they just bulldozed whole city blocks of houses.
Right.
And you can never guarantee that these jobs are going to stay. But what are some of the things that you would do, Kenny, to make sure that the jobs are strong?
It's a great question. You got to look at the kind of jobs. So, like, I've had properties that are near military bases, and then when those military bases deploy people to Afghanistan or overseas, then all of a sudden there's no renters. So you have to look at, the industry. And so what we're focusing on right now is the healthcare industry, because
it's growing.
Baby boomers, like Robert, they're getting a lot. People are getting a lot older.
So, a lot older.
I'm a baby boomer who still has an identity.
So anyway, like San Antonio, for example, has it's very healthcare based, and there's a lot of areas that Arizona has you've got a lot of healthcare, and so a lot of people are moving here for that. So
you're looking at industries that are growing and booming.
Tech, of course, is another one.
Yes.
That's
industries that don't go down with the economy. That's the answer. Remember this, all you real estate guys, because I'm tired of answering this question. Real estate is only as good as there's jobs.
Yeah. And Detroit's manufacturing. That was their industry. That was why it went down.
Well, it also was because of left-wing communist government leaders, the socialists, and all the labor unions driving up prices, and mismanagement at GM and Ford and all those guys.
How do you feel about that?
Other than that, there's how many guys right now are rushing into Detroit? I'm going, oh no.
Well,
are you rushing
that's a good point.
Are you rushing into Detroit?
No, of course not.
But people say, oh, it's so cheap. It's so cheap in
That's
Detroit.
What I don't. I'm like, it's like catching a falling knife. Like how far is it going to go? There's no way. I would never
You
go
should
there.
see that place. I mean, they've actually, think of your whole suburb, and the bulldozers just went through it and just flattened the whole thing. So it's like a bomb went through that. You
So
know,
on a scale of 1 to 10, what would price be for you as a factor on property?
Well, I've been in a position before where people have wanted to give us real estate for free.
Because real estate's a
Literally.
liability if you got no
Correct.
renters.
If you
Cost you money.
Yeah, right. You have the tax, you have the upkeep, you have all that. Even if they give it to you for free, it's
not free.
It's not free.
Right?
So-
And Kenny, Kim, and I, before the big bust in 2007 of real estate, we used to go to these big trade shows with Donald Trump and all that, and all these guys were selling everybody was buying real estate. Remember that?
Yeah.
It was just disgusting. I remember this one company, Kenny always remembers it was this beautiful blonde standing there with a nice brochure, right?
Well, there were two actually. Yeah, they had the big pictures of the high rises in
The slick
downtown New York,
brochures.
and the brochures were like $20 each. They were beautiful.
And the blondes were beautiful.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
And the
point
property
here
was
is
a dog.
this. And what Kenny and I know, the better the brochure.
Yeah, the bigger the brochure, the worse the deal. So, yeah, that was it.
So
That's-
pay
that'll tell
attention, everybody.
And then one time there was another, because I went to school to be a merchant officer of sailing ships, and they took some mothballed cruise liner, and they were selling them as condos.
I know.
And I started asking questions like, well, how much does it cost to stay alongside the dock? What's your upkeep and all? Very basic questions as a guy who ran large ships, you ask. And the expenses of ships are much higher than real estate on land. And this young girl was nice body, beautiful hair, nice brochure, trying to sell me a condo on an old passenger liner. I'm going, you got to be kidding me.
Note
But
to
people-
self, yeah. If you have to hire a model to sell real estate, you got an issue.
Most of your deals are ugly deals. That they don't look good. There's nobody promoting them.
Well, we wouldn't
Well,
be
you
able to
never
get
do-
models to our deals. Yeah.
And you never do a brochure. We barely get any numbers
Ken
out of
doesn't-
you these days.
Ken doesn't even need a brochure because most of his deals are closed out before he even has them. I mean, as soon as he has them, people are buying from him. That's when you know Kenny's good at what he's doing. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Laura in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
We have a lot of property there too, right?
Yep.
Good place.
She says, with the current state of the economy, do you think interest rates will be going up?
It really doesn't make any difference because that's what Kenny's book, The Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing. You should get that, and you should get the ABCs of real estate investing. It's the fundamentals of buying a property, identifying a property. But the Advanced Guide is the financing side of it. And while interest rates are important, and it's uncertain right now, Kenny, the financing more than interest rates is important, right?
Yeah, I mean, interest rates are basically close to zero right now. So,
They just issued a ZIRP bond. Yeah.
Yeah.
The government will pay you zero for
so
your money.
the quick answer is, well, yes, they will go up because they're at zero. So it's tough to go down from there. But I don't think they're going to go up anytime soon because it's been my experience that that will just it will slow down.
But what you did in the
economy.
last deal was you kept it floating, but the moment it starts to rise, you can fix it, right?
Correct. Yeah, we got floating interest rates that we can with what we call the ceiling rate, so we can never go above 5%.
And what else is interesting? I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, rates are almost at zero, and everybody's worried interest rates are going to go up 0.5% or 1%.
I know.
I mean,
It's
we were making a
ridiculous.
lot of money when interest rates were at 5, 7, 8,
Yeah.
even
Sure,
10%.
12%.
We did 12%. So
Yeah.
it really isn't that. I mean, they're
See, what
talking about
happens-
half points here. That
Yeah, when real estate goes up, the price comes down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So actually, when real estates go up, interest rates go up, a lot of these deals bust, and that's when you buy them.
And I think what they do is it's propaganda. They're saying, oh, rates might go up, and what they're trying to really do is they're trying to get people to spend.
to borrow more money.
And
yeah.
they're saying, well, we better borrow now before they do. So, again, when you look at the basic fundamentals, it's just a cost. So, people often forget about that. It's, when you're borrowing, it's the cost of the money. What's the cost of the money? And if you're putting it into assets, at cash flow, it doesn't matter,
Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Nicholas in Kansas City, Missouri. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He says, pretend you were starting your investment career and your strategy was buy and hold as it is today. What type of property would you buy? What type of financing would you probably choose?
I'm going to be barking at you guys a little bit here, but those are really amateur questions, very amateur. And I get sick and tired of answering. I know they're valid questions for you, and they're questions you should ask. But they really show a lack of any kind of intelligence at all. It's very simple, okay? Success is simple. If you're going to be successful, let's say golf. You know, you buy some golf. You don't need to buy them. Rent them. Take lessons. Practice. Take lessons. Practice. Then you go play an amateur tournament. Then you turn pro. But what most people do in any kind of investment, they turn pro without any kind of education, right? You see it every day, right?
I do, yeah.
And those are where we get our deals from.
Yeah, and I understand the question, and you know, these people, sometimes they want a really quick, simple answer, but it's not. You know,
those guys could go
what's
there.
different in, you know, it's different in Portland to San Francisco to Seattle to Phoenix to Salt Lake City to, you know, Denver. They're all different.
So once again, we have Rich Dad's Education, Rich Dad's Coaching. You have Ken's book. If you're in real estate, you've got to get Ken's book. That's why I asked him to write it. It's called the ABCs. It's the basics. He also has the ABCs of property management, because real estate is really about management more than anything else. It's a business. And then the third book is the Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing. That's the tricks to financing and all this stuff. But most people think, and Kim and I have seen them every single day, they know nothing, and they go out and they buy something. And the trouble with real estate is not liquid. It's hard to get into, and it's even harder to get out if the market crashes, right?
Oh, really, really hard.
So look, I get sick and tired of these questions, but they're valid questions. But it's not any different than if you want to turn into a golf pro, you better start practicing.
And you do have to practice. And I just want to say Nicholas is from Kansas City, and we have a great station in Kansas City, KMBZ, that we have our show on. So thank you for listening, Kansas City. And I just want to say this to Nicholas, it is about practice, because Kenny, you've been in apartment buildings for years and years, you and Ross, and now you're venturing into a new field in self-storage. But you're not going to tell Nicholas go into self-storage because he has no experience there.
Correct.
So to ask what you're doing isn't what he should be doing. He's got to start from the bottom up.
That's exactly right.
So let me just say this much. There are such things as stupid questions, but they're only stupid if you don't ask them. So I'm just telling you they're stupid, but I'm glad you asked them.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you for asking. So you can submit your questions to Ask Robert at Rich Dad Radio. Again, I want to thank Robert Siciliano, CEO of IDTheftSecurity.com, and Ken McElroy. He's crying in his sleep right now, and he's our partner in so many deals. His website is mccompanies.com. And I thank you all for listening.
You've been listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. To learn more about the good news and bad news about money, go to richdadradio.com.
This has been a presentation of the Rich Dad Radio Network. Please subscribe to us on either iTunes or Android. And for more information, go to www.richdad.com.